I asked my podcast partner, Jen Akins, to pound the table for a tight end not named Travis Kelce. Jen, who you pounding the table for?
Today, I am pounding the table for Chig Okonkwo. He is so cheap. So right now, an underdog, he is tight end 12. He's an 11th rounder. But in redraft, according to our multi-site tool, he is tight end 22, a 15th rounder. I mean, he came on huge in the last part of the second half, right, of last year. He was tight end 16 in half PPR points per game from weeks 9 through 18. There's no one else there to catch the ball besides Treylon Burks. I get it. The quarterback situation is very gross in Tennessee, but targets. Chig Okonkwo.
I love it. I love Chig Okonkwo coming in there. Nobody else to throw the ball to. You heard it from Jen. Go get you some Chig Okonkwo. Now let's get to the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Most Accurate Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Niles. With me is my excellent co-host, as usual, Jen Akins. How's it going, buddy?
It's going. It's going. Tight end show, July 4th weekend. It might just be you and I talking to each other, which could be the case. We'll have to see. But no, I'm always happy to talk about whatever. I know tight ends is not anybody's favorite topic, but it is important because a lot of leagues still have them. So I am good. How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing okay. It's been a rough weekend in my basketball fandom. So I've got the Dame jersey, I've got the Blazer hat. I'm coping. That's how I'm doing. But otherwise, I'm doing pretty good.
You can't all live in the championship city. I know, Brandon.
It's true. I need to just follow your teams, Jen, because everything's coming up Jen lately.
Always, or not always, but the last 2 years, everything's coming up me.
No. Things are good. I'm actually excited to talk about tight ends because it's such a terrible position that it's nice sometimes to try to kind of mine some level of it or some semblance of value out of it, because you do get breakout players who do change your fantasy seasons. And there are players that do matter sometimes. So, I'm not too upset to talk about it. But let's start with when to take a tight end. I want to talk some strategy stuff, and then we'll talk about specific players and what we think of them, and specifically from a value perspective, which is what we always kind of bring to it. But when do you like to take a tight end? We've had this conversation before, but it doesn't hurt to review it a little bit.
No, not at all. It depends on format and what you're playing. Straight up normal redraft, I'm a waiter. I am definitely I'm a waiter in all formats, but in redraft, I would say at least double digits is kind of a minimum for me, because you're only starting one unless you're in some crazy league, and they're all pretty gross, as we'll talk about. I'm sure the word gross will come up a lot because I like that word anyway, but when we're talking about tight ends, it's very applicable. So, if you get past the first few, it's all kind of a wash. So for me, I'll let people kind of take those middle guys and wait and just load up on bench depth or whatever else is going on my team and wait. So double digit for me in redraft. Under, best ball, same thing. Even later double digit for me in best ball formats. I mean, we're talking 14, 15, 16 for me there.
Does tight end premium leagues, does that make a difference for you? Or occasionally there's leagues that start 2 tight ends. How much of a difference does that make for you?
I would say a little bit. If it's a tight end premium league, I may tend to pay up a little bit and maybe get, we'll get into names later, but one of like maybe the elite 3 or 4, whatever. I maybe pay up a little bit more for that in a tight end premium league because they may end up scoring, similar points to someone that you may get in that range, as your wide receiver 2 or whatever, depending on what it is. So I'll pay up in a tight end premium. A 2 tight end, probably not. I'd probably go with a 2 scrub approach, a streaming 2 scrub approach, depending. I don't play in any 2 tight end leagues, but if I did, I think I would probably kind of equate it similar to a best ball where I'm going to just have a committee and just hope and pray.
I'm in a couple 2 tight end leagues, and I can't decide if I like it. Because on the one hand, I tend to like more players to root for. I tend to just kind of have that mentality with fantasy football in general. I like adding kicker slots and adding tight ends and adding extra flex and 2 quarterbacks. I just always like having more players to root for. But on the other hand, the tight end position is such a wasteland that it becomes prohibitive sometimes
Mhm.
to try to set a lineup and to try to roster the correct number of players, and you end up with like 3 tight ends that are just eating up roster spots, and it's awful.
Yeah. No, I got you there, and I understand why people sometimes do the 2 tight end league, just like you said, to mix things up and make it a little more fun because tight end is so horrendous that if everybody gets the same mentality and everybody waits, then it's kind of so getting to I can understand why a commissioner would want to spice up the league and go that route.
Absolutely. One more quick question on when to take a tight end. Do you take Travis Kelce? Because you got a mid to late first round is when you have to take him. If you're drafting in that spot, do you take him?
I will sprinkle him in for sure in best ball. I think in redraft, I probably won't. I mean, I haven't had any yet because it's a little early on that. Unless he falls to maybe the second round, but I don't know that I'm gonna, and it'll probably bite me in the ass and everybody else, but it's scary to lock up that draft capital right there. And God forbid this is the year he falls off, or this is the year something else happens. It's a little scary. I think, yeah. But I mean, in best ball, yes. If I'm in the right spot and it's happening to work out well, and I might grab Mahomes for a stack, I'll give it a shot. Yeah.
It's tough for me too, and I understand the mentality of you have a tight end that's so much better than the field that it does give you that leg up and it give you an advantage. And there's countless amounts of analytics and studies that suggest that that's a good way to go. I just look at the wide receivers available in the late second round, early third round, and it makes me scared to skip one in the first.
Right. Exactly. Because all of a sudden you're looking at your Terry McLaurin as your wide receiver 1, and it's like, I don't know if I want to do that.
Makes me nervous. Those receivers, they're going so fast off the
They
board
are.
lately. So it's crazy. Meanwhile, I'm getting decent running backs in the third, fourth round, which is surprising.
Yes, that's definitely a change from this year, or from
Mhm.
from past years. Running back, that I mean, I don't know, maybe we'll do a running back show at some point.
Yeah.
But that position has evolved, and it seems like this year it's a little different, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, always kind of like interesting mixes and wrinkles to the fantasy football landscape. Quickly, how many tight ends do you take? Do you just take one? I know since you're waiting, assuming that it's a strategy where you're waiting. Do you just take the one and then stream if it doesn't work out, or do you try to load up on upside guys hoping to hit one?
Yeah, in redraft leagues, I take one. Because at that point you get to where you're just going to take one, and then you hope that most people in your league take one to where you can stream or you can waiver wire it up if yours falters. But some people will take two. But from a standard 12 team league, 16 rounds, I'm going to take one. In best ball, I'm going to take 2 to 3 depending on where I end up drafting them, or who they are, basically.
In expert leagues, only one tight end gets drafted per team.
Oh,
Like, that's the
yeah.
way it goes. And in home leagues, I feel like it's the flip. I feel like most of the time I go into a home league and I'm always shocked that like rosters are carrying 3 quarterbacks in 1 quarterback leagues and
Yeah.
2 tight ends.
Home leagues are such a crapshoot, and that's the most fun about them, is that in those of us that are in this industry and we draft so much and we get so used to these drafts, and then Labor Day comes around and you roll up to your home league and you're like, oh, this is, and it's just fun, but it's also scary. It's the Wild West because you're waiting. And then, like last year, I kind of got screwed out of a quarterback because I waited and then people started taking second. I'm like, what are you doing? So, I can't remember who I ended up. I think I ended up with Carr, and it was not great for me. But yeah. Home leagues are fantastic in that way because they can be pleasing, and then they can also just absolutely gut punch when you're waiting and okay, there's 3 more good starting quarterbacks. No way these people, and then all of a sudden they just start taking seconds and thirds, and you're like,
Yeah. It always makes it so much fun. I love the casual leagues and the home leagues, and it makes it so much fun. Andy Barron's talked about how the position is a fake position a couple weeks ago when we did our grievances, which was a lot of fun. I do want to ask you what you think about his idea of just merging the position, just calling tight ends receivers or flex and not having a separate spot.
I like it, but I also don't. I'm one of those weird, I love kickers and I love tight ends. There's something about it for me. I don't know if it's because that's what I started covering in the industry when I first came in. I was the tight end person at 4for4, and I don't know if I have this special weird affinity for tight ends, and I like navigating the position because it is so volatile and it is so yucky, that it makes it kind of fun. And I feel like if you merge, then all of a sudden we have nothing to talk about when it's, I don't know. There's something about it that I just enjoy. Maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment. Maybe as you all know, I love the Festivus segment, and I love I have a new weekly newsletter for BetSperts, and I have a section called the Complaint Desk.
It's awesome, by the way. If you haven't checked out Jen's newsletter, subscribe.
Thank you very much. It's a deep dive newsletter. Check it out. But yeah, I love a complaint, right? So I think it's kind of fun to have everybody commiserate over the tight end position, and you take it away, and then all of a sudden it's just another flex spot. No one's going to start, Tyler Higbee when you don't have to, right? So why not make it to where we can all, be in it together?
Let's not start Tyler Higbee in any format at all. No, he was like the tight end 9 last year. I can't even say anything. But
I know, but it's one of those things that you just, it's like Mike Gesicki. Here we are again.
No, I'm with you. Back when I started playing fantasy football back in the early 90s, there were a lot of tight ends out there that were really good. But the league I entered into, it's a home league. It was done on paper, and tight ends were receivers. And so 2 tight ends got drafted each year. It was like Jay Novacek and Keith Jackson, and that was it, which I'm dating myself with these names.
Yeah, they're great.
They're good names. Good names, right? So Ben Coates, guys like that came along, and they'd get drafted a little bit, but
Ben Coates was a good fantasy tight end.
Yeah. And I remember when that league specifically added the tight end position as a separate thing, it was like opening a whole new world and a whole window of players I hadn't paid any attention to before.
Right.
And so I'm with you. I like having it there. And I will say, I drafted Mark Andrews really late in his breakout year, and nothing feels so good as that.
Right. And there's always one every year, but you have to hit on it. I wish I remembered some of my, 90s league stuff. I wish I knew to hang on to those, memories and thoughts. And I remember my first guy that I ever drafted, right? It's Ricky Waters. We've talked about that, but
Steve Young.
But yeah, so I remember that, but I don't remember how the league, I'm sure it was standard. I'm sure. I know we looked at the newspaper for the stats on Monday, but I don't remember what we did. I don't remember the positions. I don't remember the scoring. It's kind of a bummer. I wish I kind of kept track of that. And now everyone who, it's all online. You can look at all your leagues. And, those of us who started, pre-internet, don't have the luxury of going back and kind of seeing all that stuff. I wish I did that. I'm pretty sure we always had a tight end, but I could be wrong.
And I know I start to kind of conflate years. So pretty soon I become like the person who went fishing and the fish gets bigger every year.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm always like, I remember the year I had Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith on the same team. And that probably never happened.
Listen, I remember I had Peyton Manning and Eric Decker that one year when they both blew up, and it was fantastic. And I lived here, and they won the Super Bowl. It was a lot, but it was
a year. What a good year.
It was a good.
Everything comes up, Jen. Everything comes up.
That was the late 90s. So, not the late 90s.
Manning Decker was early.
That was later. That was much later. I was thinking about when I first moved to Denver. The Elway, the Super Bowl. That was then.
But Easy Ed McCaffrey and Rod Smith.
Yes.
Those good receivers. So
Twizzler's here on time.
Twizzler, did you tell Twizzler this is not a Leonard Fournette episode?
No, he doesn't know that Leonard Fournette has not been signed yet.
Okay. We won't tell him.
Yeah. He wants me to open the window, but it's not going to happen. Anyway.
So before we get into specific players, 2 things. The number one thing is we're not really going to talk about Travis Kelce because he's,
nothing
there's not really anything to say.
We actually already talked about him more than I thought we would. Yeah,
just slightly. But not going to go into like the benefits of Travis Kelce and whether or not he's going to have a good season. No. I do want to ask Kyle Pitts. I noticed I mostly looked at our multi-site ADP tool on 4for4. That's kind of something I've been looking at when I'm evaluating ADP as I start to shift from all best ball all the time to preparing for redraft leagues. And I see that Kyle Pitts' ADP on underdog is round 6, which is what I've been operating off of. and his multi-site is round 12. Kyle Pitts is going down. So when we talked about our grievances a couple weeks ago with Andy Behrens, I was shocked that Kyle Pitts was going so high. Now round 12 makes a little more sense to me. What do you think what the discrepancy is here?
I think that underdog are more people. I think more analytical people, right? More
That's
people
true.
that, right. So I think the redraft people are more recency bias people, and they're like, forget it, Kyle Pitts sucks, we're not drafting him. And I think that's kind of the difference. I think once people start to come back to fantasy, in the next month or so, those redraft numbers, I think he'll probably climb a little bit when sharper people return, or I don't know, because I don't know who's drafting right now in redraft on where like there's that ADP is coming from. Like I assume it might be mocks like on ESPN and NFL and Yahoo
I'm
and all of
guessing that's
that.
it. Yeah.
But I don't think that there's serious drafting going on. So, at that ADP, he's worth it. But
Yeah.
at the underdog ADP, to me, he's not. And I feel like it's tough with him, right? Because we know the talent is there. We know all the things, right, with Kyle Pitts. But at the same time, after 2 years, it's tough to really click that button for me.
Yeah, I can't do it. In the 12th round, if I could start getting into redraft, and you're right, it's mocks. It's absolutely mock drafts. We're done with the draft. We're looking at training camp. We're itching for preseason, right? We're just a few weeks out from preseason,
Right.
and so we're like, what can I do? I'm gonna go mock because I'm gonna start prepping for my redraft league. Yeah, absolutely. So in round 12, if he starts sliding there, he will become probably part of a committee for me, where I've got a few tight ends that I hope one hits. I think probably in that boat for me. So let's shift to the players. And I kind of went by ADP here. After Kelce, we've got the rounds 3 through 5. You got Mark Andrews going in the 3rd, Hockenson and George Kittle in the 4th, and Dallas Goedert in the 5th. These are what I would say are the premium tight ends outside of Kelce that you need to kind of pay up for if you're going to get them. Take me through these 4 players and your approach to them. I know you've said you don't pay up, and it's okay if that's your response, that you're just not paying for them, but I'm curious.
So I'll go one by one so we can kind of. Mark Andrews, I want to pay up for. I do like him. I feel like last season was kind of rough, right? He fell off a little bit. He had knee and shoulder issues. Lamar was also hurt. So I feel like this year we have Todd Monk in there now who likes to throw more. Let me open the window here for Twizzler so he doesn't.
Twizzler has some demands. It's
he has.
The way it goes.
He has things. But so yeah, and I like Andrews, and I feel like when he's on, he's on, and so I think that he's one of those that if I was going to pay up, I feel like he's kind of the sweet spot. Well, not the sweet spot because he's still a 3rd rounder, right? So you're not paying. Of course, Twizzler just left. We're not paying all the way up, and you're not burning a 1st round pick on him. But you're still getting kind of a good premium tight end. Next you go, Hockenson, kind of similar, right? He's living his best life right now in Minnesota.
He is.
And I feel like, that offense has there's some competition, but at the same time, I think he's going to get his share of targets. So I don't hate him either. I don't know that I will be paying up in redraft for him. But if it hits right in best ball, I may here and there. Kittle, I'm out. I get nervous, injury risk. There's a lot of mouths to feed in that San Francisco offense with a question mark really at quarterback. So if there wasn't, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, I just, and Christian McCaffrey, I might be more apt to take Kittle, but I think he's the one out of all of well, that's not true because I'm out on Goddard too. I think that, last year Philly was the fourth run heaviest team in the league last year. And Goddard hasn't scored more than 5 touchdowns in any of his 5 seasons in the league. So Kittle and Goddard are the 2 that I'm just out on. I don't want to invest that high of a draft capital for them. Andrews and Hockenson, I would. Are we talking about Waller yet, or were those the 4 you wanted to talk about?
Those are the 4 I wanted to kind of start with. Yeah. So Hockenson, interestingly enough, he only had 3 touchdowns with the Vikings in 10 games. So that feels like that's got to go up, right?
Right. The positive regression thing. Yes.
I would think so. He had 3 with the Lions as well, but only 3 in 10 games with the Vikings. Like that feels that. Also, today, TJ Hockenson turns 25. Happy birthday, TJ Hockenson.
Oh.
Just going to say. So
Happy birthday to you. 25 is good. Yeah.
yeah, I'm okay paying for him. I like that Andrews and Kittle, and we'll get to Waller, but this group isn't going in the second round like it was
Right.
last year.
Right. No, true. They are more affordable. And like Goddard, I understand why people would want to pay for him. That offense has a lot going on, and it just makes me nervous.
Yeah, they run a lot, and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith both just soak up targets. I'm out on Goddard.
And Jalen Hurts, runs too. So
yeah, I have talked myself into Kittle.
Have you?
I have.
Okay.
I quietly played 15 games last year, 14 the year before. Now I know he's always a little hobbled and all that, so the games played isn't the best way to evaluate his health, but I know he's laid some huge eggs. He'll be 30 in October. However, he was the top tight end in fantasy football over Kelce while Purdy was at quarterback.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't even really close, to be honest. Kelce was fourth. It's a 6-game sample size, so not huge. But Brock Purdy threw to George Kittle. He threw a lot to George Kittle and a lot to Christian McCaffrey. Most of Purdy's touchdowns went to Kittle and McCaffrey. Fourth round pick, like if Kittle was going second round like he was a year ago, I would be out. But fourth round, if I don't like the board and I don't have a tight end, I find myself talking myself into Kittle. Purdy sounds like he's going to be good to go to start the season, and I'm a Purdy believer. I don't know if I'm anointing Purdy as the next Hall of Fame quarterback, but I liked what he saw last year. He processes the game so fast, and that's a skill that translates and can keep you around for a little while, especially in Kyle Shanahan's offense with the weapons that he has. There are a lot of mouths to feed. You are correct in that. With Deebo Samuel there, Brandon Ayuk is still a good player, and McCaffrey's going to get his. But I've talked myself into Kittle, Jen. Is that okay? Because I know your feelings.
No, I think it's great. Somebody has to take him, right? No, I think that no, listen, I mean, you make a solid point. I'm not going to say you don't. So, and we all have to kind of get rid of that, that recency bias thing that gets us every time, where in my head I think Kittle hurt, and he like you said, he quietly wasn't hurt, I guess. So yeah, you make a good point.
He was the clear tight end one for those 6 games that Purdy was starting, which is really, really, it surprised me. I didn't quite know. I was looking at splits today and I was like, oh wow, well that's far better than I thought, because I just remember him losing me a playoff game. That's all I remember.
No.
So okay, so let's go to that the middle round guys, right? So, and I'm talking Darren Waller in the 6th, Evan Ingram and Pat Freiermuth in the 7th, and David Njoku in the 8th, and then you get Cole Kmet and Dalton Kincaid in the 9th. That's what I call the middle rounds of your fantasy draft. Any thoughts on these players? You don't have to go one by one, just kind of any highlights that you feel like you want to share about this group and where they're going.
I don't know that I am going to take anybody in this section. I don't. The thing with Waller, I can see him getting a lot of targets. That offense, we don't really know. It's kind of a nameless receiving core right now. Paris Campbell, there's a lot of hype for him right now. All of a sudden, he just rose fetch. Like 20.
He's fetch for me.
he rose like 25 spots in ADP over the last 2 weeks because he had a good mini camp or whatever. People remembered that he's in New York, but a lot of nameless faces there and a lot of hurt people and people. There's just a lot there. It's standing room only in the wide receiver room there. So Waller could end up with a lot of targets. He could also be hurt. And so Waller is really a no. Ingram, I feel like there's a lot there too. You add in Ridley and it's a little bit tough. Yeah. But I mean, he's also, a 7th rounder. So I could talk myself into Ingram if I had to out of that group. Freiermuth, similar. He has a decent floor, right? A decent, 7th round, maybe Freiermuth. That's if we believe in Kenny Pickett. So there's that too. Njoku, I don't know. He's tough, man. He's had this like mixed bag of seasons. Like he's clearly talented, but I don't know. Is this the year? Like here we are. And I feel like we say that every year. So I don't know. I mean, 8th rounder, it's not too much of an investment, but I feel like at that point, I'd maybe rather get a good bye-week fill-in or maybe my wide receiver 3 or whatever around that turn. So I think that this quad of tight ends are probably all a pass for me.
Yeah, the only one that I'll buy is Freiermuth. The rest of them, I'm with you. I'd rather wait a little bit because I don't think there's a big difference between this group and the next group that you can get in the double-digit rounds, which you've already highlighted as the place that you go. I will say Freiermuth, tight end 8 in fantasy points per game last year, and he did it while only catching 2 touchdowns. I will say only caught the 2 touchdowns from Mitch Trubisky, so like Kenny Pickett didn't throw to him in the end zone. But Pickett could be better. All but one of his 9 picks came in his first 5 starts. So Pickett got a little better as the season went on. We'll see. I will say George Pickens caught 4 of those 7 touchdowns that Kenny Pickett threw. I'm just, wide receiver sleepers and guys to look at. I
love me some George Pickens. And for some reason, a lot of people are down on him this year. And I'm like, that's fine. You cannot be, take advantage of his circus catches. I will.
I'm going to draft him a lot because I think I think he's going to put up really good like fringe wide receiver 1 numbers. I think he's going to be really good. And then Njoku, I'm out on Njoku too. Like I like the talent, but we have to remember I mentioned Freiermuth, the tight end 8 in fantasy points per game, and I'm talking 0.5 PPR fantasy points per game. Njoku number 9, but that's only 1 point per game above the tight end 15. Right. But it's 1.1 points below the tight end 6. So like after tight end 4, 5, 6, like it gets ugly fast and there's not a big difference.
No, you're right. And you know what? If you look at, John Paulson's rankings, like if you look at the, that there's projections there and you look at the actual, what he's projecting for the season, it's like once you get to, obviously the first are all the same, but once you get to tight end, like 13. So 12 is Dalton Schultz, 13 is Freiermuth. He's projecting them both with 102 points. And then like Dulcich, they're all about the same. Like it's like they're all around 100, 95, 93, 92. Like Taysom, they're all the way down to, So they're all the same.
It's a big grouping and you're just kind of hoping one of them hits. I will say, so let's assume that Deshaun Watson is better than he was in the 6 games or so that he played with Njoku, where Njoku was the tight end 16 for those 6 games. Just so you know, Watson was not good and was not looking to Njoku. So Njoku's going as the tight end 8 right now. So the hope is that Watson is better and that's going to feed Njoku, but Watson's never used a tight end. Now he's never had a tight end like David Njoku, and that's fair to say. But like 2020, 2019, and 2018 were his 3 like full seasons as a starter. Jordan Akins tight end 32, Darren Fells tight end 21, Jordan Thomas tight end 45. Like those are his tight ends. So it's not like there's not like evidence to point to say Deshaun Watson is going to provide a phenomenal fantasy tight end. And Njoku, I feel like we wait for his breakout every year. I feel like this is him. He's a guy who's going to pop a couple weeks a season and otherwise just kind of middle his way around. That's kind of what I think he is.
I mean, it's totally cliche, but best ball, good for best ball, not good for redraft.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So, I want to talk about late round targets. So this is, instead of just going through all the players, I want to talk about guys you actually are targeting. Obviously you mentioned Chig and Okonkwo. Who else are you looking at in those 10 rounds and above? Somebody that you want to take a stab on going into your redraft seasons.
So I wrote a couple down that are pretty deep. Like I didn't go with kind of the, like you said, the next 5 in the rotation here.
Sure.
Excuse me. One guy I wrote down is Sam Laporta, the rookie in Detroit. He's a day 1 starter. There aren't a ton of passing options there in Detroit. He's a 10th rounder. Underdog, he's tight end 20, a 14th rounder. So I feel like, people are a little bit scared of rookie tight ends, as they should be, because they don't historically do that well for fantasy. But where he's being drafted, I think he's a good gamble. I think based on the fact that he's walking right into that starting job. And I think that you've got you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then you've got a whole lot of nobodies until Jameson Williams comes back. And Jameson Williams at the same time, we don't even know, he was great at Alabama, but he had 1 catch last year. Everyone's banking on this guy being their wide receiver too. And what if he's not? So I feel like Sam Laporta is one of those guys that people are overlooking a little bit. In underdog, they're not. I mean, he's going a little bit quicker, but I feel like in redraft, he's going to be one of those guys that just slides and you can grab him, super late. The other guy I wrote down is the Colts, Jelani Woods. So there was a report this week from the Indianapolis Star that they think that Woods is likely to take on the Goddard role in the in the new I can't speak, Shane Steichen's offense. So that's what the beat writer said, that he might take on that Goddard role there. So I'm all about that. He's big dude, athletic dude. There's 15 tight ends there in Indy right now. But if the beat writers think he's the guy, I'm all in, because right now he's tight end 32 on Underdog in the 18th round. And in redraft, he is tight end 30 in the 19th round. So
I'll tell you what, as someone who writes the player blurbs weekly for the Colts, I would love for one tight end to just become
I'm sure
relevant there. I'm so tired of writing about like 3 tight ends that are all ranked from 20 to 25.
I
And
know.
be like, I don't know which one to pick.
Yeah, it would be nice. And I'm hoping maybe with this new offense there that they'll kind of narrow it down and actually go with one, and possibly Woods. And he's as free as you get. He's a last rounder in every format.
He's got the profile too.
Yeah. So. Those are the only 2 I wrote down. I can talk about more if you want, just out of my head, but I figured that you probably wanted to add your 2 cents.
Yeah, I've got a few guys. Don F, hi, thanks for listening. Says Bryce Young. Forgot Bryce Young's name suddenly. Bryce Young and Hayden Hurst, basically a free best ball stack. Yeah. Obviously talking about QB3, tight end 3 for roster. Absolutely. Love that stack. Also love sprinkling in some Tommy Tremble. I think Tommy Tremble has some value.
I've been known to overweight myself on Hayden Hurst in years past. This would not be the first time, so I'm all about it. Doesn't matter where he is, I end up somehow taking him every year.
Frank Reich, and we're going to get to, I wanted to, let's just do the Carolina talk right now, because I wanted to talk about Frank Reich coming to that offense. We've talked about this a little bit before. We can project and talk about all these players and these pieces and how they're going to fit together in Carolina under this new coaching staff, but we really don't know. We haven't seen any of these players play together. It's a completely new offense. So I'm very interested in how this is going to work. And Reich has made multiple fantasy relevant tight ends in the past. We've seen it with players who've been really, really good fantasy tight ends and players who've just spiked at times. So in a best ball situation, both those guys could be good.
No, I'm with you. Tommy Tremble, it's one of those, I've wanted him to be good for a while, and it just doesn't ever seem to happen. But maybe this is the year for Tommy Tremble.
He's an interesting guy because he came out of college projected as a blocker only. Right. He was one of the best blocking talents in that draft, and then he kind of showed up to camp and started catching the ball, and people were like, "Wait a minute, you're not supposed to have hands." Right. And he's just kind of slowly developing as a route runner and as a receiving option. I think if you're looking at breakout tight end potential, Tommy Tremble is up there. He's also just as likely to do nothing and fade into
of course.
So it's
and that's really kind of where we are in these final. And there was a long time that I was all about Juwan Johnson, and I have so much of him in best ball, but Foster Moreau is back and he is cancer free, and they're looking good. And they're saying
so happy for Foster Moreau.
No, absolutely. But I've seen reports from New Orleans beat writers that he is possibly going to take that job from Juwan Johnson, which is a bummer. Mm-hmm. Not for Foster Moreau, of course, but for all of my Juwan Johnson shares that I loaded up on during the spring.
Absolutely.
But you never know. We'll have to see how that goes, because of course there's always the Taysom Hill factor, which I assume we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Let's talk about Taysom Hill. Let's do it. So he's another one, like right now on our multi-site ADP tool over at 4for4.com, the tight end 19 going in the 13th round. So obviously doesn't cost a lot of money to put Taysom Hill on your roster. In best ball, it's a little more interesting to kind of throw him out there because of those spike weeks that he gets. How do you approach Taysom Hill in redraft and best ball?
Redraft, I don't know, because I don't want to make that decision every week. Yeah. I don't think that's happening. But in best ball, absolutely. I wrote about him this morning. He was actually the highest, the highest rising tight end on Underdog over the last 2 weeks in ADP. There's been reports, as usual, right? He's lining up everywhere, and he's this, he's a cheat code. You have to draft him in best ball. Maybe not every round or not every draft, but you have to sprinkle him in because he's going to have 2 or 3 weeks where he has 3 touchdowns, out of nowhere, and he's going to do nothing. But so in redraft, no, because I wouldn't want to make that decision every week with him. But in best ball, I would absolutely smash, because I think he's a 16th rounder on Underdog.
He's so cheap, which is weird on Underdog that he's still that cheap, because an Underdog, he is very valuable as your second or third tight end, right? So In redraft, I'll be honest, in 2 tight end leagues, which I am in 2 of those, Taysom Hill is an automatic for me because I can't find another tight end that's going to have spike weeks. And even in redraft, I'd rather live with 5 weeks of zeros.
Right.
Because
I mean, if you're going to take us, I guess for me in redraft, I wouldn't want him as my only. But if you're going to have a bench spot and you're going to have a second one that you can kind of alternate or use him on bye weeks, and I just feel like I would always pick wrong, and I would put him in when he does nothing, and then the next week he's going to have 3 touchdowns on my bench.
And you just have to live with those zeros with him.
Yeah.
Like that's just, which is unfortunate, but sometimes it makes sense when you're staring at streaming, because often you're streaming a tight end who's probably going to get you 2 points anyway. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, streaming, as we know, is it's an ugly game, but it's kind of a fun game. I think I've just been so used to it that I feel like I've gotten pretty into it. We do a whole show about it, so.
Well, and you're very good in general, so you tend to have good advice and good streaming options, even at the tight end position. So
I try.
I'm curious. I wanted to talk about my late round. I didn't quite get there. Everybody kind of forgot about Zach Ertz. Like, he's available at the end of draft, so I sprinkled him in.
I was taking some Trey McBride earlier. I think the quarterback situation is just scaring people off,
which is fair.
I think it's just like, what are we doing with Arizona in general? And I think people are just skip. I don't mind taking Trey McBride at the end just in case, but I don't know. Is this the year that Zach Ertz falls off? I mean, I don't know is he 33? I don't even know. He could be 28 for all I know. I feel like everyone's old and then they're not. So
I didn't write down his age. He's probably in his early 30s, though, I guess. But but he was good until he got hurt last year.
Yeah.
And I know the quarterback situation is concerned, but he's a tight end 26. Like, you can get him at the last round of your redraft.
Yeah, I think. So. Yeah, I don't know that I would, but I could understand it. I think you could definitely paint the picture of drafting him and why, and I think it makes sense. I don't know that I will, but I wouldn't fault anyone for doing so. It like you said, it makes sense.
And Jelani Woods was on my list. The other guy is Cade Otton. Cade Otton, I fully expect to
we've talked about him. I didn't even bring him up because I've talked about him a lot.
I fully expect him to disappoint me. I fully expect him to be my new Gerald Everett, I think. But I'm going to draft him everywhere.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? I just feel like in that offense, like, what? Why not?
There's nobody else there. At tight end. Nobody else at tight end.
Right. Yeah. Cameron Brate's gone. It's all his. You've got Baker or, God forbid, Kyle Trask throwing the ball there. So why not Cade Otton? I mean, I just, if Baker is inaccurate and he can't get it down to Evans, or I just feel like, why not Cade Otton? And he's so cheap.
So cheap. He's free. He's going past all the guys that we've already talked about. So, and he's probably the starter, and all the camp news has been really positive. Like, people seem to like him. So it seems he was good. He
was good last year when he was afforded the opportunity. I mean, now granted, Tom Brady threw like 7,000 times last year, but still, Cade Otton was good when Brate was out and when given the chance. So I have no problem with that. Another guy also, by the way, that I was reading earlier today that's kind of emerging is Jake Ferguson. Like, I know they have the rookie there as well, but Ferguson apparently is, turning heads at camp. So if you believe in that sort of hype thing, he's there, and he's cheap too.
That was my next question for you. Is how are you going to approach the Dallas Cowboys tight end position?
I don't know that I will, but I feel like if somebody is looking for something that late and all the guys we've talked about are not there, then listen, these are all darts at this point, right?
Absolutely.
So we're just chalking ourselves into which darts and where you're going to throw them. But Jake Ferguson's he's just as viable as anybody else to do something this year.
I will say, if you do the late round tight end strategy that we're talking about, which is I mostly recommend that as well. If you do that strategy and you find yourself with an empty roster spot heading into the season, stash Jake Ferguson. Might do nothing, but Dalton Schultz has been a tight end one, and a good tight end one when given the opportunity. There's room for a tight end to thrive there.
There is, and I don't know that Luke Schoonmaker is going to be. I feel like, he may be good
rookie tight ends.
He may be good later, but I think Jake Ferguson is someone that no one's really talking about. Which, I wouldn't rush and grab him, but like you said, bench stash at the last round or a best ball as part of a committee tight end 3. Why not?
keep an eye on that snap count week 1, week 2. Keep an eye on that because he might be a top streamer. And even if he doesn't catch a ton of passes that first week, if he is on the field most of the time and racking up some targets, you might be able to kind of get him a little bit early before he becomes a prominent streaming option. So I want to talk about one more rookie real quick. The Raiders, Josh McDaniels is there. Jimmy Garoppolo might be there. We'll see about his health. Michael Mayer was touted as the most pro-ready tight end in this draft, goes to the Raiders in the second round. He's available in the 13th round right now on our multi-site ADP tool. What do you think about Michael Mayer? Do you think there's some fantasy gold to mine in Las Vegas?
I'm a little wary of that. I feel like you said, maybe Jimmy G, it may not be. Even if it is Jimmy G, I mean, is he good? Right? I mean, we're kind of in that. I don't know. I think he'll be fine, but for a rookie, I'm not clamoring. And in fact, that same Risers and Fallers ADP article that came out today, he is the biggest faller of tight ends.
Interesting.
Over the last 2 weeks. I mean, it wasn't a huge drop. It was like 5 spots. It was half a round or something, but it was still something. I mean, he did drop in ADP over the last 2 weeks. I think people were super stoked. And then I think people are also backing up a little bit because of that Raider offense and just the uncertainty there at the QB position.
Yeah, the doubts of Jimmy G's health, that's gotta be a big factor.
And that's the thing, like we said, I mean, even going into it, it's still Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, we're not super stoked on him as it is, and then now he's possibly has a foot issue. Like, it's like, I think unless you're Devontae Adams, I'm not really going there.
Yeah, I think that's very, very fair to stay away from it. Do like him in Dynasty, though. If anybody's interested in Dynasty, I do like him in Dynasty. I think that the quarterback situation will straighten itself out over the next couple of years, and Mayer will be the guy there. I do like him more as like a future tight end 6, though, than like a future tight end 2. I just think he's more of an all-purpose blocker, receiver, Jason Witten type instead of the elite guy. So I want to ask you about 2 more teams because I think there's some questions on 2 more teams. Denver is a team that we've been trying to find a tight end there for a while, and we keep kind of getting excited and getting hopeful. We have Greg Dulcich there. We have Sean Payton there now. Dulcich is getting more expensive every week. He's the 9th rounder now on our multi-site ADP tool.
Wow.
Which is higher than he was when I looked a couple weeks ago. So how are you approaching Dulcich? Is he, if he lasts into those double-digit rounds in that 10th round, are you going to take him? Would you consider the 9th round?
I don't know about the 9th, but I think if he slips, possibly. My home leagues, I happen to live in Denver, so he will go earlier just because people just take Broncos regardless of their, but I feel like he's kind of one of those guys that people are scared of the Denver offense, period. I mean, it was as rock bottom and ugly as you can possibly be last season.
It really was.
They just did not score points, like real points or fantasy points. They did not score. So we have Sean Payton. I think that if Russell Wilson can he's not going to return to how he was just because he's older and things are different. But I feel like if he can at least put some semblance of what he used to be together, why not Greg Dulcich? I mean, he had a decent year last year. I can't remember. I didn't look him up. He was a tight end 1 for parts of the season. He was a starting tight end, not the tight end 1, but a fantasy tight end 1 at some point. So I feel like he's someone that everyone's kind of forgetting and everyone's kind of, oh no, Broncos offense not going to go there. And there are a lot of, I don't want to say there's a lot of mouths to feed. There's a lot of questionable mouths to feed, right? Like there's Cortland Sutton, there's Jerry Jeudy. Tim Patrick is coming on very strong from reports at camp. James Palmer of NFL Network posted a video the other day talking about that he feels like Tim Patrick is the best person in that locker room, like talent-wise, which is crazy. So I feel like there's a lot of options there, and so I don't know how much they're going to use the tight end, but hopefully Sean Payton will do it, use it more, because last year a lot of people got burned on Dulcich, and Alberto was just a train wreck for a lot of people.
That killed me.
A lot of people went into the season thinking he was going to be this great sleeper, and he was horrible. I mean, they just didn't use him. So
I had a lot of Gerald Everett and Alberto, and it didn't. The tight end situation wasn't good for me last year.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about Gerald Everett or Higbee
Interesting how neither one of us have brought up Gerald Everett this year.
Listen, I've actually taken plenty of Gerald Everett in baseball. Absolutely. Redraft, I can't. I can't even look at that name every week, but best ball, absolutely. I've drafted him because Sure.
Why not? Yeah. In that
why not?
offense. I mean, they were second in the league in pass attempts last
Yeah,
year. So
I know.
interestingly enough. So one final team, the Green Bay Packers. You're getting lots of camp buzz about the
Yep.
rookie Luke Musgrave, Oregon State alumni. So I'm a fan. How are you approaching the rookies in Green Bay?
I'm not taking those guys. I just feel like there's too many other players out there without as many question marks. You've got question mark as far as rookie goes, right, for both of them. And then you have Jordan Love, which no one knows what we have. So I think we're in a situation where there's too many other guys out there in that same, tight end 12 through 30, you can throw a dart at all those guys. And I just don't think that either of those rookies are of interest to me. And they may be great, but I'm okay with missing out on that.
And he costs more than Dalton Schultz and Chig Okonkwo.
Oh, really?
A lot of the guys, not a lot more, but he costs a little bit more than those guys. He's like 14th round. All those other guys are later.
And it may be the other rookie that they have in the end, right? I mean,
yeah. Tucker Kraft?
Yeah. Tucker Carlson? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just my mind is at Kraft. It's all coming to Tyler Kraft.
No, it's Tucker. It's the last name that I'm not sure about.
Tyler Kraft, Tucker Kraft.
Tucker Kraft. Yeah.
There we go. Anyway.
Tyler Kraft and Tucker Kraft.
Yes.
That's the way it goes. So
either way, I'm not drafting either one of those guys. Let's put it that way. Nor am I drafting Tucker Carlson for anything. Let's just go on that route.
Tucker Carlson probably not a good fantasy football player.
He is not a pick for anything.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Scampers.
you, Mr. Scampers.
Of course.
Tyler Kraft and Tucker Kraft. So that's all I've got this week, Jen. Any final thoughts before we go?
We did not talk about New England. We did not talk about Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki. Look at your face. I can't listen. I am not a fan of Mike Gesicki, but I have to admit I've taken a few shares.
How dare you, Jen? How dare you?
I feel like the Patriots are going to do a lot of those 2 tight end sets, and I feel like why not? I've been taking both of them. They're both really cheap.
It's true.
So redraft, no, because that's a headache every week trying to figure out which, who, whatever. But in best ball, I have to say, how I'm definitely, Mike Gesicki is not Jen approved, but I have taken him a little bit.
Still not Jen approved for redraft, though. Absolutely not. So thank you, Mr. Scampers, for checking us out at the end there. I hope you have a wonderful evening as well. Listeners, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Jen Akins NFL and at 2 Guys Brandon. Thanks so much for checking us out and have a good day.